All right, thanks, Joe. All right, our next speaker probably doesn't need any introductions either. It's Brian Dunkin, who's one of our very recent past presidents. He's a professor of surgery and the head of the section of endoscopic surgery and the medical director of the Houston Methodist Institute for Technology, Innovation, and Education, MITIE. Got it, okay. So Brian has really an international reputation as a educator and has been a mentor for so many people over the years. And so I actually had the opportunity to attend the Brandeis Health Policy and Leadership course, courtesy of SAGES and the Foundation a few years ago. And so right along those lines, Brian's going to be speaking about how to mentor, coach, and develop leaders.
Thank you, Anna. Good morning to everyone. And thank you for saying MITIE, not MITIE. You know, we're in Texas, things are big, right? So Dan and Steve asked me to talk a bit about mentoring, coaching, and developing leaders. And we have leaders already within the organization in the room. And so I'm going to focus on kind of how we might do this better and how we might do it more. And this is what I'd like to cover in time at the podium. Define mentoring to start with, discuss some of the techniques, discuss also why and how SAGES can do this, and then I'm going to do a little modeling and do some informal mentoring with you from the podium. So in preparing for this talk, I asked myself this question, am I a mentor? And wasn't really sure how to respond to that. Certainly people in the organization seem to think I'm a mentor. I asked Steve for some guidance on what he wanted me to talk about for this presentation, and he basically said, you've been a mentor and a mentee for a long time, and talk about that. So it seems that others outside of me recognize that I've been a mentor, but a dear friend asked me this, well, tell me about someone you have mentored and how that affected their life and their career. And I can come up with a list of people, but the structure of it wasn't clear to me on how exactly that had happened. It seemed ad hoc, it seemed casual, it didn't seem planned. And so I think we should talk for a minute about defining, well, what is mentoring? Joe might like this. This is the origin of the word. So the term comes from Greek mythology. When Odysseus of Ithaca went to fight in the Trojan War and wanted to entrust the care of his son to someone that he trusted in that role. And so his son, who was Telemachus, was assigned to be looked over by an older and wiser friend named Mentor. So Telemachus and Mentor developed a strong relationship built on a foundation of guidance and support, and that's where the word comes from. And it's really come to mean teacher, counselor, coach, facilitator, motivator, friend. All of those things are kind of rolled into this term mentor. This is a definition I like, a process for the informal transmission of knowledge, social capital, and psychosocial support perceived by the recipient as relevant to work, career, or professional development. Now, there are elements that are important to mentoring. So first of all, it's typically an informal communication. This isn't a PowerPoint presentation. It's done face-to-face, almost always in a one-to-one relationship. And it's done over a sustained period of time. This is not a single event. Mentors have greater relevant knowledge, wisdom, and experience in the domain that we're mentoring. And mentees, or protégés, is another term to use, are less knowledgeable or have less of knowledge, wisdom, and experience in that domain. Now, this differs from coaching, which is more focused on a specific task. And many of you know I've been involved in a project in SAGES that we call telementoring, trying to help surgeons in their operating room learn new techniques and new technology using audio-video communication. Maybe we should call that telecoaching, because it's more around a specific task and a specific objective. It's not focused on the general goals of the individual or overall development of that person. And this is where I think I got caught up a little bit in trying to think in my mind about who I might have been a mentor to. There are different types of mentoring. There's formal mentoring, and then there's informal mentoring. Formal mentoring is often arranged by an administrative unit within an organization. If you're in an academic place, you might have done this with residents. In my place, for instance, new interns are assigned a formal mentor to help them guide them through their 5 years of clinical training. Formal mentoring recruits qualified individuals, both mentor and mentees. It provides mentor training, and I want to come back to that later in our talk. And it helps match the mentor and the mentee together. Now, one caveat about that matching is that formal mentoring programs, which simply assign a mentor, like our residency program does for interns, without giving those individuals say, they don't perform well. So in our program, yes, we assign you a mentor, but the resident has the option to change that mentor as they develop in the organization, and maybe they find someone that is more aligned with their goals, objectives, and they have a rapport with. And we encourage that. Informal mentoring has no structured recruiting. There's no matching process. There's no training of the mentor or mentee, and typically it develops naturally. It's out of some type of communication and rapport. And for me, this has been almost exclusively in my professional life outside of clinical training of residents and fellows, the type of mentoring that I've typically engaged in. And I think it's why it's been a little bit fuzzy in my brain of, is this someone I really mentored, or we just had a really good conversation intermittently over the years about different topics of interest? Now, effective mentoring forms goals. It creates a schedule on how to meet those goals. And as I mentioned before, there's training for mentors and proteges. And this is something I think the society should take to heart, that if we're going to have people within the organization serve as mentors, and we have many that can be great at that, we should think about what type of training to provide them. And likewise, for mentees or proteges, if they're going to be mentored, are there things within the organization or without that we can include in that mentoring experience that help them move down their career path or move through the organization in a way that we want? The other thing about effective mentoring is there's evaluation. How are we doing? Are we getting where we want to go? And if we're not, can we adjust? So let me talk a little bit about why SAGEs should do this in a more mindful way. Mentoring makes for more effective leadership within the organization. That has obvious benefits to everybody, both the organization and the mentees themselves. It helps us to promote growth in our members. And if we do this well, with planning, with training, with measurable goals, it really is a reward for service. Who doesn't want to be mentored by someone that they respect and has a career trajectory that maybe they want to emulate? And it really furthers the society's goals. And we have a number of goals within the organization that will benefit from this. Some of the goals are work done by parts of the organization that are complex. And because of that complexity, you can't simply show up one day and begin to take a leadership role in these parts of the organization. And so that first bullet point, CPT RUC, we have advisors to the CPT Advisory Council and the RUC Advisory Council. These are people that help work with the AMA to choose your CPT and RVU valuation for the things that we do in our life. As you can imagine, there's a lot of things to know about that process and do. It probably takes 3 to 5 years to get our advisors up to speed in that. So they need a specific program to do that. Advocacy and health policy, quality and outcomes and safety, guidelines, fundamentals, all of these are parts of the organization where a process for training the people that are involved so that they can mature and contribute meaningfully is really required in order for them to be effective. The other thing on why SAGEs should be doing mentoring is SAGEs leaders, as you heard, they get sunsetted from this organization, but they become leaders in other organizations and in the House of Surgery. And the better that we prepare them for that, the better it speaks to our society and the more effective they are in the House of Surgery. So let's talk a little bit about how we would do it. So again, you've been hearing a lot of kudos to our current president, Dr. Dan Jones, who has an amazing ability to focus on a project and get things done. And one thing that is being rolled out at this weekend at part of this leadership conference is this opportunity. He's actually, you should have received an email, actually you did receive an email sometime within the last number of weeks asking do you want to be a mentor or a mentee within the SAGES organization? And if you did, you went to a simple website, it takes 15 seconds to sign up, and now the organization is in the process of matching mentors and mentees, with the caveat about not just doing that blindly. And so we're thinking through how we're going to allow that process to encourage selection, but also to administratively get accomplished. So if you haven't seen this in your inbox, look for it. You're going to get a reminder about it again after this meeting, and sign up, whether you want to be a mentor or a mentee. Now, the other opportunity you have within the society is this. So you may or may not know that when past presidents rotate off of the executive committee, so this now means they're 2 years out of their presidency, there's an informal organization, a group within the organization that we like to call the Dead Presidents Club. And this group actually gets together at the annual meeting every year, does things together, and having this group more formally engaged in mentoring within the organization, I think is a spectacular focus for them to work on. And I'm sure that we'll see elements of that as we move forward. Things that we can do with that mentoring program. You've heard about the structure of the organization, our committees showing up, doing good work, just teaching our committee leaders how to be better stewards of that committee. Beyond some of the things that you might have heard, things like what are Robert's Rules of Orders, and how do you use that, not just to kind of know what you're talking about when you're trying to get votes and things, but really to manage that committee in an efficient way. Basic budget principles, we heard about how important that is. And we had some interesting exercises at the board meeting about teamwork and deploying those kinds of things to help our leaders manage teams in an efficient and effective way. Apprenticeships are really what I was talking about for those different groups that need years to develop people in order to do those roles well. So we have that, for instance, in the CPT RUC. We don't just have one person that does that. We pair them with another person, kind of the junior person in that role, and they attend these things together and learn. So there's institutional memory, there's learning, and when you're ready to assume that position of responsibility, you've been trained on how to do that. There are other tools within the organization that you should know about. So this is one of them, and Ann mentioned this, the Brandeis Award. So every year, SAGES gives two Brandeis Awards. These are scholarships to go to Brandeis University for a 5-day program, which is intense. I had the honor of being awarded one of these awards. Ann and I attended that meeting together. And these are really to help train clinician leaders in healthcare policy and management. And I will tell you, I've used things that I've learned from this experience to understand better healthcare policy just in our world, but also on how to negotiate better, how to run groups and get them to be more productive. So if you're interested in maturing yourself, apply for one of these and tell the organization why you want to do it and how it's going to help the organization, not just yourself. Another opportunity is the SAGES Foundation Excellence in Medical Leadership Award. This award, given to the organization from the foundation, is given to an individual to use however they see fit for a leadership program. You can apply for this as well. Tell the organization why you want the award, what you plan to do for it, how it's going to benefit you, your world, and this organization, and you can be a candidate to receive this. And we should use these as a society and encourage people that we've identified within our organization that we want to rise up to use this as one of the levers to do that. And this is an idea that another colleague of mine put in my ear, and the concept of pay it forward. So we all kind of get that, and we would understand that if I was mentored and then I become a mentor myself, that's great. But one thing that they said to me is, if you really want effective mentorship within the organization, just shut up and do it. So if you're a mentor, or you want to be a mentor, identify someone to mentor, don't tell anybody about it, and do it. And then watch that person rise in the organization or in their life or in their career. And so I think we should think about that for a moment, each and every one of us that has the opportunity to do that, and mentor. So let me finish with a little bit of modeling. Let's do some informal mentoring. I don't know if this is exactly what that is, but these are my ideas on how you can be successful in the organization. And if you're in this room, it's likely because you're a committee member or a committee chair or in some leadership role already within the organization, and you seem to be motivated to want to do more of that. So let's go through that. You've heard a lot of different opinions about that. I'll give you mine. Responsiveness, probably top on my list, right? So one of my mentors in the organization, Steve Schweitzberg, who's mentored many in the organization, pulled me aside one day and said, Brian, you can rise as high as you want in this organization, but you better answer your email. And you better let us know that you're engaged. And it changed my behavior from that day forward, and I think that was key in part of my success within the organization. You heard about engagement. Don't be on your computer or phone during meetings. Be engaged. Show up early, stay to the end, participate. Prepare for that meeting. That's an in-person meeting. That's a phone conference. Whatever it is that is the work of the society, prepare, read the material, ask questions, be ready to do that. And this is particularly important, I think, in this society. Succinctly present your thoughts and ideas when we are in a forum of many people. This is a high-energy society. People like to participate. There are a lot of ideas floating around. And so when you stand up to present your idea or your opinion, do that succinctly and efficiently and sit down and let the magic happen. Work on an identified project. And this doesn't mean, so just being on the committee ain't enough, all right? You gotta sign up for something. I think everybody knows that. But the thing about that is, don't just raise your hand and say, yeah, I'm gonna help work on that. When you raise your hand and you say you're gonna work on that, bring that project to fruition. Do something that's gonna, don't just throw out ideas. So I'll give you an example. So I had the opportunity to participate in developing the flexible endoscopy curriculum for the American Board of Surgery that's now required for our residents. And we had an amazing retreat with leaders from all over the country to participate and give good ideas on what that might look like and how it should be done. But it took two people from that committee, Jeff Marks and myself, to actually write something coming out of that committee. So on the following week, literally, we wrote the entire curriculum. Not that was going to be the final curriculum, but that committee needed something to focus on, to edit, to massage, to add to subtract from. And so that's what gets you known on the committee. That's what gets you over participation and into outcome. Be careful not to overcommit. This is my single biggest failing. And I do it, and then my world expands and contracts, expands and contracts. But the downside of overcommitting, it's great to be enthusiastic, it's great to be wanted, but then when you overcommit, you're ineffective on the things that you've committed to. And that then feeds back negatively onto you. So be thoughtful about what you're committing to, and when you commit to it, go all out. Write well. That might not seem obvious, but you heard from Leanne about writing your idea down into a proposal. That's a 1 or 2 page proposal. That should have the same rigor when you're putting it together as if you're submitting that to a journal. Because when your ideas are communicated clearly and succinctly, they get acted on. And so write well. That's whether it's in that proposal, whether that's in an email, whether that's in reviewing the writings of the organization. And lastly, I would say don't be afraid to speak your mind, but do it respectfully and humbly. And I will tell you that one thing that really impressed in my brain in my experience in this organization, I was a new member on the board for SAGES. It had to be within my first couple of months on the board. And an issue was being debated among the board members that was moving in a direction that I really didn't agree with, and I didn't think was in the best interest of the society. But man, I was a new member, and you got past presidents and people that you've been looking up to for a big chunk of your career arguing about how this should go in this direction. And the newbie on the board, I don't know if I should even chime up on this. But I did. And I did it humbly and respectfully, I hope. And it changed the direction of that topic. And actually the society moved in a completely different direction with that particular issue. And so you can be effective. You can have a major voice. Just be thoughtful about it, and don't be afraid to stand up and speak respectfully and humbly. So I hope I got through these objectives, defining mentoring, discussing some of the techniques, the whys and hows, and provided a little bit of informal mentoring from the podium. Look at your inboxes when the notice comes out again about the mentoring opportunities within the society. Take advantage of it and apply for those awards if you think that can help move you along in your career path and help you contribute more meaningfully back to the society as well. Thank you.